Hi, my name is McKenna and this is my testimony. I was born and grew up in America. When I was about 8 or 9, my dad got called over here to Albany, Western Australia to run a church. I had to always go to church, it was more of like a chore, not something I really wanted to do. In my early teens, I started to look for things like my purpose and love in other places. I met this guy and at the start I thought he was going to be good for me. He ended up getting me into the absolute wrong crowd. I ended up getting into drugs and drinking. I would get high most nights. I lost my job and I was just the lowest that I could have been. I definitely thought that this relationship was the answer for what I had been looking for love, but it ended up just being like lonely, and I was so young. I didn't know what love was like, so I just assumed that this was what love was. The worse it got, the more angry I got. Ultimately, I was just angry at God. My parents always said that God is good and God protects us, but I was just so confused on why God was letting me go down this path and if I was ever gonna get out. And ultimately, I just felt empty deep down inside, but I kept covering it up and just going on with the way I was living. Emma, one of my former EA teachers, and Kylie, my former chaplain from school, they wanted me to come to church. They saw how lost I was. But I would go, but I just couldn't commit. I'd go, but then I just couldn't, and I was just living two different worlds. I started experiencing the worst pain I've ever felt in my life. So I got rushed to hospital, and the next day they told me I needed to have surgery straight away. I had a cyst on my back. I went through with the surgery and they left the incision open and it was huge and it was so painful. I missed out on work and it wasn't healing and it ended up getting infected. Every day for over a month, they were either coming to me or I was going to the hospital and they were cleaning it and dressing it and packing it. And I ended up having this suction thing that I had this machine next to me that I had to go to work with. Everything I was doing was meant to make it better, but it only got worse. It got infected and it was so painful. And I was just still angry. I was like, I'm missing out on more work. I can't provide for myself. But me and Lydia, my good friend to this day, I was still living for the world, but I was seeing something different in her. After I found out I needed another surgery, she was like, come on, just come to church again. I was like, I don't know. I've been to church before. It's not gonna do me any good, but I was just so low, so I was like, yeah, I'll go. I was still in pain, I could barely walk, but Lydia picked me up and took me to church. As soon as I walked in there, I just felt safe, I felt like I was at home. At the end of the service, there was an altar call and Pastor Bev prayed for me and prayed for healing. I just felt this release, off my body. I was no more pain. I didn't feel pain on my back. So the next day I went back to the hospital for them to change my dressings and kind of talk about what was going to be next for this possible surgery that I was going to need. And they kind of looked at it and the doctors, they were in shock. The doctor asked me, I'd been seeing him for a month. He was like, what did you do? Did you do something? And I told him, I said, well, I went to church and got prayed for and God's healed me. He was like, yeah, there's no more infection. There was barely a wound there and I wouldn't need to come back again. So I kind of was just okay, God, you've shown up. I've encountered you. I just kind of felt God speaking to me and saying, McKenna, this is it, I've got you, there's no more running. I just rededicated my life to God and was ready to start this journey with him. Looking back at my life, I can see God didn't leave me, I'm the one who ran. We can feel like God is the one who's far away, but really it's us who are far away. So I decided that I would join the youth group team as a leader, just to kind of show that my life is living proof that you're never too far away from God, and whatever situation you're going through, you can get out of it. God has a plan and a purpose for your life, and now I can minister to these young kids, these young girls, that you don't need to be in these toxic relationships. You need to find your love through God. That's been pretty amazing, just watching my life do a 360 turn, wait, no, not 360, 180. See what means all the way around. 180 turn. Do not put that in. Last Sunday, I decided to make a public declaration and be baptised. And the best part was just watching these young girls from youth make that decision as well, that they were going to get baptised, and staying in that water with them and praying over their lives and their future was just amazing. It just showed me that God really is doing work in my life. Like that I was sitting there praying for them, like in the water. Like a year ago, I would not have known that I'd be doing this now. It just shows that God has a plan and a purpose for everyone's life. So if there's anyone like out there feeling like they don't have a way out of the life that they're living, I guess this is me just here showing you that my life is proof that there is a way out.